guys, can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, great. So first of all, I just want to ask, who's involved with the hotel here? Anybody? You should be. I stayed here last night and it was wonderful. And I met Dylan today. Do you guys know Dylan, the hotel manager? Dylan's a pro. I just talked to him for like 5 minutes, but I can already tell that he's great at what he does. So I just want to encourage you all, if you have the opportunity, I don't know when that happens, or if it's open all the time for people or how that works, but you should definitely get involved because you're going to learn a lot about what to do. It's 6 rooms, but it's nice. So I definitely recommend it. I just wanted to say that first of all. So thank you guys for the hospitality on behalf of the college, letting me stay here and everything. It was wonderful. And like she said, I was here in 2019, spoke to the class. I kind of talked about like my career progression and my story, which is great, and I'll share some of that experience with you, but I don't want to do the same thing again, because one thing that rings true here, but also rings true in our business, we have a phrase at my hotel, which is you want to do it so well that people come back and they tell other people and bring them along with them. So I take that same approach to here. I guess in theory, I spoke so well the first time that I was invited back and brought other people along too. So you don't do the same thing again. You have to elevate it. So that's in context with this, that first little anecdote for you guys. So before I get into what I want to talk to you guys about today, I wanted to help you, if I can, understand the lesson that you were learning about last week. Does anybody remember that lesson? Last week's class? Yes?
You're talking about how hotels can franchise themselves?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't here, but that's what I was told was being talked about. So at least it matches up. So I guess there were some questions or confusion. Is that true? You guys maybe need some help with that? Yeah? Okay. So I'm sure she did a great job explaining to you, but the biggest thing, like, we just have to start at like the top of the funnel, which is that a hotel is a real estate asset, just like a house or a store or anything like that. So a real estate asset has owners. A school is a real estate asset as well. So any building is a real estate asset. So the ownership can be comprised of several different things or entities. And I won't go into each specific detail of every one of those options, but for simplicity's sake, let's just say that there's a private owner. So let's just say that I am wealthy, which I'm not, but if I was, I would invest my money into a hotel. And if I invest 15 to 20% or whatever the lender is asking for, that means that I'm the owner, so I own it and the bank owns it, or whoever I'm getting the money from. But let's just use this. So now we've established the ownership entity of the hotel. There's an individual owner and a bank that own the property. So in this fictitious example, I'm not a hotelier. I'm just a guy with money. And the bank, they're not hoteliers. They're just people with money. So I can't run the hotel. I can just own the hotel. Well, I can run it, but this is why it's confusing, because sometimes you can, sometimes you don't. But in this case, you have an owner, and then you need a management for this hotel. And by management, I don't just mean like Dylan, who runs the hotel here, because he's one person. To run a hotel, you need a management company, which is an organization that all they do is trade their expertise for a percentage of the revenues that are generated from the hotel. And typically they're also incentivized based on the profit that the hotel generates, which, with the revenue, you can't work for nothing. So they know that as long as they have some money, the management company is getting paid. Typically that is right around 3% ish of revenue is paid to the management company, and then they get incentivized on the back end for running the hotel efficiently and making a profit. But the third piece of this is also the brand of the hotel, which I'm sure is something that you all are probably the most familiar with. Hilton is a brand, Hyatt is a brand, Marriott is a brand, IHG is a brand, and all those have a million different brands within them. Holiday Inn Express, Avid, Fairfield Inn and Suites, Hampton Inn, True by Hilton, DoubleTree by Hilton. Does that make sense to you guys? All this stuff, right? So the brands, so when you see a DoubleTree by Hilton hotel, DoubleTree doesn't own it and they don't run it most of the time. But what they do is provide you with the infrastructure for sales and bookings. So on the individual reservation side, they have a global program called Hilton Honors or Marriott Bonvoy or Hyatt Globalist or whatever the other ones are. So they have that. So it drives individual bookings, which is something that as an owner you want, because just opening the doors of your hotel and you have nobody staying there, that doesn't do you any good. So you want that. They also have something called worldwide sales, which helps bring in big pieces of business like groups, conventions, negotiated business travel accounts with system-wide companies. They also have revenue management support. They have operational support. So all these services that they offer that are associated with the brand. And then as the owner of the hotel, you see value in that. So you brand your hotel with that. You hire a management company who's approved by that brand to manage it. And then you pay, as the owner, you pay the management company 3% or whatever the agreement is of revenue plus an incentive for profit. And you pay the brand in my hotel, which is a 209-room hotel, we pay them about $1 million a year to be a DoubleTree. And again, that includes Hilton Worldwide Sales, Hilton Honors, loyalty program that includes our revenue management services. So we pay a lot of money to be a Hilton. But if you're in the business and somebody says to you, well, you know, $1 million is too much. If you're running a hotel and the owner says, "Why we can't afford $1 million, I think we want to go independent," then you might want to look and see what the value of the brand is. So just the other day before I came here, because I knew I was going to be talking about this with you guys, I looked at our Pulse report, which shows our mix of sales and other things. So I said, and like, let me put my finger on the pulse of what's happening at the hotel and look, and I saw, wow, 60% of our transient reservations, meaning individual reservations made by people that are not associated with the group, are from Hilton Honors members. So if the owner said, I don't like paying $1 million, I want to go independent, I would say, you can't do that because 60% of the reservations on the transient side are coming from Hilton Honors members. So you have to know what's going on first of all, and that will happen to you. But does this make sense to people, what's going on? The ownership, there's a management company which might manage anything from just on a regional basis to on a global basis, and then the brands who offer their brand, their sales support, their services. So that I would say right now is one of the more common things. You could also have it where it's a roadside motel, like an Econo Lodge or a Roadway Inn, or you guys all know those kind of places, right? Where it's an owner-operator, where the brand just says, hey, we know that you're kind of, this is maybe it's a $3 million a year business for that total, for this roadside motel. And you don't have the money to spend on a management company, so on and so forth. So a lot of these motels have owner apartments in there, so you can live and work in the hotel. And the brand just says, here, you can own this real estate asset, and we're allowing you to manage it under our Econo Lodge brand. So that's another thing. But you wouldn't typically get that with a bigger brand like Hilton or one of those other ones. I'm actually fortunate enough that my property right now is owned and operated by our president and CEO, Craig Poole. and then we have the brand of Hilton, which I actually think is one of the better indices for success. Is the less red tape and different entities you have, the more successful you can be, because there's not so many conflicting interests. So when you're interviewing for a hotel and you're going and you're sitting down, one thing that you can say that will make you seem really smart, but also will benefit your life, is to ask the question of who owns the hotel, who manages this hotel. Tell me about the interests at play in this hotel, and let them explain that to you. And some people, you might sit down and they're not even going to know, because you might be sitting down with a middle manager at a hotel somewhere, and they're going to be like, what? I don't even know what that means, because people don't know. But you'll know, because she's teaching you and we're explaining it. So I would encourage you guys to just like do some research in your free time about this. I know you may have more fun things to do, but I think it's pretty fun to look and see what's out there and what people are doing. But I will say that's a big piece of advice. Next time you go into an interview at a hotel, ask them what interests are at play, ask them who owns it, who manages it, and how that impacts their lives, because it will impact your life. So that's that part of it. Are we good on that? Because I didn't want to spend the whole time talking about it. Was that good?
Perfect.
Okay, thanks.
Much better than me.
Oh, stop. So today, I wasn't sure what I wanted to talk to you all about. Like I said, I knew that I wanted it to be different than last time, because you can't do the same thing twice. But it wasn't until I showed up here today and I saw some of you and I talked to Professor Leone and I heard about what some other guest speakers had talked about and what is important to you guys based on what she said. And I learned about, she told me some stories about her time speaking to the general managers of the Marriott properties in the area. And it got me thinking about kind of two messages that I wanted to share with you, which hopefully will be impactful to you. Which, number one, about the amount of fun that you can have in this business. And then number two is the deep meaning that you can find working in this business, because I think those are both important. But before I do that, is that important to you guys, learning about that? Okay. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about the fun that I can have. And I'm just going to rattle off a few like quick stories that kind of illustrate that. I've worked, so I've worked in 10 hotels in 5 states across the country, doing that in full-time and in task force roles. So for those of you who don't know, and I know that we talked a little bit about this last time I was here, but a task force position is when a hotel needs help on a temporary basis for a role that's critical to them to keep operating and to keep their business going. So for one of the examples, I went to Oakland, California at a 360-room airport hotel as the director of rooms, because their director of rooms was on maternity leave. So you're not going to fire her and hire somebody else because she's on maternity leave, but you can't do it all yourself, so you bring somebody in for task force. So the reason I say this is because it was fun as a part of being in this business. So I was able to, they flew me out of Chicago, I flew into San Francisco, they sent a black Escalade with a newspaper in the back seat and mints to pick me up at the airport with a private car service, drove me into the hotel. They put me up in the hotel. I was there for a month and a half, because then I had to go back to my hotel because they couldn't be without me, and they brought somebody else in for task force. So they sent me with a private car service to pick me up. They put me up in the hotel for a month and a half. I got to eat whatever I wanted for free, stayed there for free, ate for free, drank for free, which was great. And then Oakland, California is right across the bay from San Francisco, so they came to me and said, we want you to take a day off. And they sent the same black car service to pick me up, drive me into San Francisco. They put me up in a beautiful downtown San Francisco property to spend the night away from the place that I was working at. And I had a beautiful seafood dinner right on the Embarcadero, and they paid for everything. That was fun. And that's what you can do in this business. Another example of that is I task forced in San Diego, California at a 1,200 room hotel. And I did the exact same thing. I lived there, I had fun, ate and drank for free, met a lot of new people. So aside from that, I've also lived in 3 hotels for extended periods of time. Like right now, I work out of a award-winning, actually the #1 DoubleTree by Hilton hotel in the brand in Canada, the United States, and South America. I live in the hotel and I work there. And that's fun for me because every night I have dinner with the owner of the hotel and I learn and we have fun. We eat good, we drink good. Like you don't have to just clock in and clock out. You can have a lot of fun. A couple weeks ago, I was on somebody's private jet because we were catering for them. I didn't know that, I've never done it before, but we did aviation catering. So they ordered meals and I went in and I said, how big is your jet storage? How many meals total are we ordering? And what size convection oven do you have on the plane to be able to reheat this food? So I had to go there and think through, okay, what containers are we using? How many meals are they ordering? Can it all fit if we stacked up the total number of containers in their refrigerator, and then will those fit in the oven? But I was on somebody's private jet. They had their Jaguar parked in the airplane hangar. And this is just me going into work in hospitality, just me going into work. Another time, a guest who I wasn't even staying at my hotel, they actually called on the phone to ask if we were pet friendly, and I just happened to be the one to pick up the phone. We had such a great conversation, and I never heard from them again. Turned out that they ended up staying at a hotel a few blocks down the street because that's where somebody in their family was staying. But it was nothing personal, they just ended up staying there. Then one day I'm working, and the phone rings, and it's that same person. I remembered them, and they said, hey, we're finally here in town. We know we're not staying at your hotel, but we wish we were because we like talking to you on the phone. So what we did for you was we bought you 2 tickets to a Lake Michigan dinner cruise that has open bar, multi-course meal, dancing cruise. That was like a $700 or $800 value. So I left work, walked to the other hotel, picked up the tickets, and went on an $800 dinner cruise for no money, doing nothing. Another time, a guest called me and said, hey, can you move my room because something wasn't right? So I moved their room, and then the next day I come into work, and there's a 2-hour Swedish massage with tip already paid for the spa right across the street from the hotel for me to go in and get a free massage. So these are just small little examples of having fun. But you can allow yourself, like you just have to make the decision of how much fun am I going to have in this business. Again, you can go into work, not want to be there or whatever. To me, this business is way too much work for that to be an option for me. I think I made the decision a long time ago that I was going to commit to myself to have as much fun as I possibly could doing this. But I just decided that I was going to do it. At the time that I was here in 2019, I was actually living in Chicago, and I'm actually from this area. I went to Glenbard North High School. I don't know, do we got any GBN? Let's get it. So I went to this area, but since then I've moved around the country. Right now I live in Pennsylvania. But I decided that I was going to do that because I wanted to be mentored by the owner of my hotel, which is an award-winning property. With that being said, I think I'm going to transition now into the meaningful part of the business. We know how much fun it can be again, but the key is you have to just decide and commit to having fun, because anybody will do the transaction of the business. Anybody can do that, but you'll be happier if you just allow yourself to have fun. So I will start off by telling a story about one of my last shifts of working in a Chicago downtown property. So I was this was 2020, and I was working at the Witt Hotel in downtown Chicago, which is on the corner of State and Lake, right across the street from the Chicago Theater. It's 310 rooms, rooftop bar, lobby level tavern, probably 10 or 11,000 square feet of meeting space. And this was the pandemic. It was May 2020. And I was one of like maybe 12 people or something like that working in the hotel. And we had gone from like 260 or 280 people down to 12, and I was one of the 12 people. And actually this is my friend Greg, by the way. Should probably introduce him at some point. But Greg was also there, so he and I were working together in this hotel. And we had gone through the pandemic a few months now. I was also living in the hotel, by the way, because I just was. Because there's only 12 people, so you got to be there. Well, let me rephrase that. You didn't have to be there. Because like Greg didn't live in the hotel. He made the decision not to live in the hotel. He had the option to. You had the option to, right? I did. It was offered to everybody. You can do this or you don't have to do this. The context of, and this is important, the context of Greg's life is that Greg has a son, he has a family. His situation is that during a crisis, I want to be at home with my son, correct?
Absolutely.
But he was also working because he's a hospitalitarian, very passionate about the business, and also found the importance of being present at the hotel to lead during a time of crisis. But he also needed to lead his family, so he didn't do that. To me, I don't have any kids. As a matter of fact, I was living due to some circumstances that happened with my friend getting cheated on and having to move out and all this other stuff. I was living in a one-bed, and my brother getting fired from his job. This whole thing happened with other people in my life. But I was living in a one-bedroom apartment in Chicago with 3 grown men total. So I had my bed in the living room, my brother had an air mattress in the kitchen, and then my friend had the bedroom. So contextually, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna live in the hotel, right? And during a pandemic, I'm gonna be sharing a floor with 3 people. But it was also for me, wow, we're living through the greatest crisis ever recorded in the hospitality industry. So we're living through this moment in history. Why wouldn't I want to be as deep in it as I possibly could be? Because this is life for right now. We're still living in it. We're still living in the impact of it. So that was part of it. Was if I know that we're living through this moment in history right now, and I don't have a family in the context of my life, why wouldn't I sacrifice myself to this right now? Because it's just a moment in time. I'm not in that situation now. So you can make that decision, right? There's going to be another pandemic. There's going to be, right now we're probably going to have a recession. There might be, there's going to be wars. There's going to be crises that happen. 9/11 happened, not when I was in the business, but it happened. And people were working in New York City when 9/11 happened. And they had to make a decision at that point as to how deep they were going to allow themselves to be going into this crisis. So what also happened, so now we're in May of 2020. I'm living at the hotel. There's 12 people there. We're in the pandemic. And then everything happens with George Floyd, and he passes away. And for those of you living here, you probably know that there were riots and chaos that was happening in downtown Chicago. So my hotel was right at the intersection right at the epicenter of the most chaos. We had a Chicago police car that was on fire, literally like right outside the front door of the hotel. We had all of our windows broken in, our bar got looted, our lobby got destroyed. And keep in mind, we're an operating hotel with guests, with very little staff. So I remember that day, leading up to it, we knew that there were planned protests to be taking place in the area, and we were aware of it, we were alert, but we didn't know what it was going to be. So that day, we were just monitoring the situation. It got to the point where there started to be this feeling that something was going to go wrong. So we made the decision to start barricading the door with lobby furniture. So you have a hotel, and we basically had to say, okay, we're going to take this couch, put it here, we're going to lock the revolving door. So we're locking the doors first, foremost, but we're going to start barricading this building because something is going to, we feel that it's ramping up out there to a point that's not safe. So then along with that, we're barricading the building. We go onto the PA system, the emergency PA that can broadcast to all the public space and to all the guest rooms. And we tell the guests that it's our recommendation that you stay in your rooms and do not come down to the lobby because of situations unfolding outside in the city. Just a recommendation. At this point, we couldn't force people not to go outside because we're not a prison, we're a hotel, and because it hadn't hit yet. So we do that, and I remember standing in the lobby and just seeing what was happening and looking out the window. There's no guests in the lobby at this time. I think it's me and a couple other people. And then all of a sudden we hear, the sound of glass shattering. And we're in the lobby, and the lobby had this tavern right off of it with a door. The door was closed, but you hear it, and then you start to hear so people are in the building. So we went to the PA, and now we know people breached the building. So we went to the PA and said, this is the hotel manager. Everybody shelter in place in your room because intruders have entered the building. And then we all ran from the lobby because we knew that people were about to be in there, and ran into the back office and closed the door. And in the back office, we had a TV with cameras. So then it was me and security and a valet attendant and maybe one other person who worked, a housekeeper who was working. So we had 4 people total in the hotel, and working. We're all in the back office, and we're just basically watching on the cameras as the whole place gets destroyed. So that happens, and the lesson of leadership in this time is that when people have anxiety, they want to feel like they have something to contribute rather than just being a sitting duck. So you have 4 people who are sitting here. So what do you do for these 4 people when they're so scared? They're deeply scared about what's going to happen to them, what's going to happen to their family, because they know in the moment you're afraid for you, but you're also afraid for your wife and kids who are at home. You're also afraid for, I see my place, a business that provides me livelihood getting destroyed. So now what am I going to do tomorrow when I can't come into work? So you're thinking about this. So as a leader, what do? You try to take people's minds off of it. So there was an alarm that was going off, and an alarm that's going off increases anxiety because it's an anxiety-inducing tone. So one of the housekeepers was shaken. So we said, okay, why don't you just silence the alarm, which basically meant hold this button down to pacify the alarm system so it doesn't keep going off and keep raising everybody's blood pressure. So we did that, and that was something like, okay, my job is to do this. Now I'm doing something. I'm contributing. We had another person who we had a fire extinguisher and a step ladder. So we put the step ladder in front of the door to the lobby, and put the fire extinguisher down and then had the hose out. So in case somebody broke into the door, we could spray them with the fire extinguisher, so it would, they wouldn't be coming in so quickly. And then with somebody else, it was, okay, why don't you call the police and tell them what's going on? Again, the police know what's going on. Obviously it's happening, but what can you give somebody to do so that they don't feel so bad about the situation they're in? So I only went into that detail just to tell you about leadership, but anyway, this whole thing happens. The police finally get control of the intersection. I walk out into the lobby, and the whole place is destroyed. And I'm walking through, and you know, if you all remember, the situation was there was a protesters and there was the police. This was the conflict that was happening, not just in that moment, but also that was this whole the George Floyd conflict was based on that dichotomy. So at this point in time, the police had occupied the hotel as a kind of centralized post, if you will, where they were coming in to use the bathroom. They were coming in because we had food and we were feeding them. They were coming in because we had water. And at one point we had cases of water that we were just feeding out to the police because there were no windows anymore. So you could just, you know, go like this and now you're in the street. So we were giving them cases of water to take out to people. So that was happening. They basically took over the hotel. They went into a place and started setting up leadership posts for people to come in. So this is happening, and at the same time, I'm walking through the lobby, and I see a black woman who's standing outside, looking inside the building, and she's holding a sign in her hand, which tells me she's somebody who was here to protest, and she's crying. And I'm walking by, and she says, "Excuse me, sir, can you help me?" And I said, "Can't you see I have more important things to worry about right now?" Because look around, the hotel's destroyed. I have guests here. I still have people checking in who I have to call them and tell them they can't show up. So, can you help me? No, I have more important things to worry about. And I walk away, and then I thought to myself, you know, that's not hospitality. What are you doing? So I go back and I say, "I'm sorry about what I said. I didn't mean that. How may I assist you?" And she said, she was crying, having a panic attack. "I didn't know that this was going to happen. I was just here with my friends. I'm lost. My phone is dead. I'm not from the area. I'm just, you know, everything went wrong." So I invited her into the hotel. And to that was, the door is still barricaded, but it was just, I invited her to cross over the broken window into the hotel. I took a broom and like sweeped off one of the things that was covered in glass, let her sit down. I took her phone, plugged it in, charged it, gave her some water, and showed her hospitality. So it was so memorable and meaningful to me because here we have a situation, again, police versus protesters, and you have a hotel. And the police knew that the beacon of hospitality in the community was a hotel, so they came in and they occupied in this oasis, or this refuge. And this protester knew, on the opposite side of the coin, knew that this hotel was a beacon of hospitality in the community, and if I'm in trouble, I can find refuge in the hotel. And so she came. So now we have people coming to us, even as we're in crisis, to be shown hospitality and to be taken care of. And it was just so meaningful to me. I probably worked maybe 28, 29 hours straight that day, but it didn't matter because we were upholding our place in society as the 24-hour a day, 365-day a year refuge for people who, whether it's in a crisis or whether it's just somebody who's tired when they're coming in and they need to rest their head, or they're seeing their daughter for the first time since she had a baby and they're really excited and they're staying in the hotel. So that story I told you to illustrate the meaning of hospitality and the deep and profound meaning, which has kind of propelled me to the next chapter of my career, which is in Reading, Pennsylvania, this award-winning hotel. So after that happened, the hotel closed because we couldn't be open anymore. The insurance company said this building is not fit for occupation, obviously, so we had to close. I did spend like about a month and a half living in the hotel by myself with no guests, basically like The Shining, like just keeping guard over the building, which was scary. Because one night I actually watched The Shining at like 4 a.m. in the lobby when it was all boarded up. Bad idea. But what ultimately ended up happening was I lost my job because the hotel wasn't open anymore. So what I did was I called who's now my mentor, my owner, and the owner of my hotel, and my boss, Craig Poole, who was in Reading, who I had kind of met on LinkedIn and over the internet, and we had talked a few times. He was a guest on my podcast. I called him and I said, hey, I just lost my job. Can I come in and see what you're doing at your hotel? Because I have this free time on my hands. Again, make the choice, decide to do something. I knew I was laid off and I decided to call him and say, hey, I will work for you for free because I just want to keep doing something and I want to be in this business and I care about this business and I want to learn from you. I will work for you for free. Can I come in? And he's never met me before and he says, yes, go ahead. You can come in. I'm going to put you up in the hotel for 3 weeks for free. I'm going to feed you for 3 weeks for free. And he gave me a name tag and he basically said, run wild. And actually Greg came with me and we figured we might do some podcasts while we were there because that's something that we do. But we ended up finding a deeper story and making what became an award-winning documentary film called Follow Me and I Will Be Behind You. And I'm going to show you the trailer real quick because I want you guys to see it all goes into this conversation that we're having.
Someone said, will you come to Reading, PA? And I said, no. And then when I understood that Reading was a marginalized community, I thought if we can come here and work in this hotel and get this hotel right and put this culture right and get it in line right with the city, that we would be able to help make a difference for people that have been forgotten.
Craig has a history of fixing hotels and using hospitality as a means to do so.
I did not know to the extent of how incredible Craig was going to be.
He gave a kiss to everybody. He gave a hug to everybody.
The Doubletree Reading downtown was the first hotel of its kind.
Only running security? Me? You want to give me keys? A criminal?
We don't hire people what they did yesterday. We hire people for who they are today and what they're going to be tomorrow.
First of all, just don't use drugs. That was never part of my plans in life.
From gang members to presidents of companies to, it doesn't matter to us who you are. We just love you unconditionally.
I have learned to love this city because of this hotel. It has grown, it's blossomed, it's become the light of the area.
We've been the #1 Doubletree in the world twice.
That's what hotels are, hospitality. They're a major part of the community.
So I share that with you. Thank you. So this is what we did when I went to Reading after my hotel closed. And I still lived here. I hadn't committed yet. But I made the decision to ask, can I work for you for free? I made the decision to capture something. I made the decision to put something together that would help show people what is going on in this business. And then the decision that I made from there was to actually relocate my life to move to Reading, PA, to learn from Craig to see how we can infuse the most meaning into our hospitality business, into our careers. So for some of you may know this, some of you may not know this about the business, but hospitality has a dichotomy where you have these high-end executives, ownership, executive leadership, and then you have even sub-blue collar workers in your hotels who are washing dishes and stacking chairs, tearing down banquets, doing that sort of stuff. And it's all existing in the same building or in the same ecosystem. So for you all who are being college-educated people, when you go into a hotel, you have to understand, and I'll just tell you a couple quick things that happened in my hotel. We have whipped cream in the hotel, ready whipped cream cans, and we just had to implement a new policy that all the whipped cream in the building, instead of being in the walk-in cooler, is now being relocated to being under lock and key behind the bar because people from the kitchen were doing whippets with the whipped cream can, getting high. Right, it's funny, right? Because this is what's happening? But this is what's happening in this business. So you have people who are coming in, they're getting high from whipped cream. One of our line cooks, his brother just got 40 years in prison. So when he comes in tomorrow and he's in a bad mood, I'm not gonna tell him to clock out and go home, or you're a piece of shit, or you're not doing your job right, because something happened in your life, and it's important to you. It's important to me, as a matter of fact. But you have people who've been incarcerated who are working. You have people who are recovering addicts. You have people who are still getting high. You have people who are showing up to work drunk. You have people who, whose families are in crisis. You have somebody who shows up to work late because their electricity got shut off in the middle of the night and their alarm didn't go off, or something happened with their kids. So in the world that we live in, if it's not that world, we just don't think that kind of stuff happens to people. So when we show up to run a hotel, it's unacceptable that you did that, or we're firing everybody, or this isn't going to work. But until you are living in that environment and you get to really sit on the curb with people and learn about them, and that's why one of the reasons why I made the decision to live in my hotel, because at night when everybody goes home, I get to sit down with people and learn about them and learn why, what's happening in their lives, or what's working here and what's not working here. I get to see the look on the people's faces when we serve them dinner at the function. And all that's very important to me. But people might say, but, how do you ever get time off? And my response would be, well, when am I working and when am I not working? Because it's all just blends together after a certain point. And it's just, you have to decide what kind of life you want to live. So to me, I made that decision. To most people, that wouldn't be the decision that they would make. But that was my whole point today, was I'm in pursuit of fun, which I have a blast. I get to go on private jets. I get to go do all this fun stuff. But I also get to have meaning when your hotel gets destroyed and you welcome people in, or there's also meaning to sitting down with somebody, consoling them when their brother gets 40 years in prison, or helping somebody who just got out of prison who is going to stumble, and you just have to be there for them. That's follow me and I will be behind you. Follow me and I will be behind you unconditionally. So this business is fun and it's meaningful. You just have to make the decision to embrace it. That's my talk for today, but I welcome any questions. Yes?
So you were the article, the job of hotel workers, right? It wasn't
The what?
the job of hotel workers, that was you, right?
The job of hotel worker. Oh, maybe a while ago. I don't even remember, but I'm sure I did.
I'm just making sure we remember.
Yeah.
So then in that article you said it's an employee's job, it's about more than enforcing management. Is that a realization that you can come to on your own? Years of experience, is that something you bring to your team? Was there a moment that you realized that? Or
Wait, what did I say? Sorry, I really don't remember. I'm sorry.
you said that an employee's job is about more than enforcing management. It's about like thanking the people.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was there like a moment you came to that realization? Was it like gradual over time? Is there a way you can help people you work with understand that without lecturing in a college?
I think I learned it because I worked at so many different hotels and I kept seeing it. Because if you only see one thing, you're going to think that that's reality. Just like with the people that you work with, if you only see what you think that that's what life is, but it's really not. So when you see a pattern repeated at so many different places, that was the realization where I was like, wow, people are really, this is what's happening. So I think it was a gradual realization, or just pattern recognition over time of seeing that was what was taking place. So, yes.
Well, first, I want to know if you can get me the DoubleTree cookie recipe.
That recipe has now been made public, so
Is it really?
yeah, it's public now, so you can get it. Yeah.
Okay.
The more secret recipes.
Yeah.
But I want to know. It probably was the experience you already told us about, but I want to know if the hardest experience you had in the hospitality business, and what did you like? How did you work to rectify it?
Yeah, so that was definitely the hardest thing, was when the hotel got looted and rioted. That was the hardest thing for me. But every day is hard because you are constantly burdened, if you will, and not burdened in a negative, but you're genuinely burdened by the weight of the expectations that you set for yourself. So if we, like you saw from this, we're an award-winning, we're the #1 DoubleTree by Hilton hotel in the brand. That's hard to stay that, to be that, to live it, and to own it. So every day is hard when you're successful because success is the enemy. Just like I was saying to you guys today, I couldn't do the same thing I did last time today, and it was hard for me to come up with something to talk about, and I decided what I was going to talk about as half of you were already sitting in here. I had no idea. That's hard because you have to keep elevating yourself. So every day is hard, and how do you overcome it and how do you rectify it? You just have to be grateful for the fact that, wow, we are #1 hotel. Wow, I do get to come here and be with you guys and be invited back to come and speak to you and hopefully impart some knowledge on you. You know, wow, we're, you know, this person who has just got out of prison, we get to be a support for that person and help them make their lives better. It's the overcoming it is just deeply rooted in gratitude and understanding, and then also having fun too. It's really hard, but it's a lot of fun to serve somebody a great meal and then to walk around the dining room and to get the feedback and the praise of how everybody's enjoying it. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I totally understand that. It makes a lot of sense. Like, I understand, like, I'm not necessarily in the hospitality, like, hotel business. I'm here for baking and pastry, but I do understand that same feeling when you serve someone the dessert you made and they all enjoy it, seeing, like, their happy faces and stuff. So I totally understand.
But you are in hospitality. That's
Well, I know it's hospitality, but I'm not like a straight up hotel manager or something.
Nope.
Like that.
You don't need to be. Baking and pastry is great. We just served a wedding the other day where we catered the wedding, and we actually just promoted somebody to pastry chef at the hotel, and she's been doing a lot, but this was her first time that we sold a wedding cake. So she was involved in meeting with the client at the hotel, doing a food tasting with the desserts and deciding what they wanted, and then putting the cake together, bringing it to the client at the wedding, staging it at the wedding so it was displayed nice, and then receiving the feedback. And this is all for people who are staying in the hotel, who are having a wedding catered by us, and she's a part of it. So you can have a deeply connected experience to lodging in hotels through, if you want it, if you decide to, or if you decide to do something else. But through baking and pastry, it's all connected, and understanding the 360 of it will help you be more successful as you go on. Because some people, if you only know baking and pastry, when you go into Four Seasons Hotel in downtown Chicago and say, I want to be a pastry cook or a pastry chef, they're going to expect that you understand the 360 relationship between the dessert that you put out and the rate that they get on the room and how that impacts the business. So just think about that as you move forward. But yes.
I'm going to go back to that same article. It said, like I paraphrase what you said, it says, like, if you take things away, you don't reimburse the customer, they'll think that you don't care, like the industry doesn't care about like the customer. If you have like kind of like what strategies, like what did you do like for like a labor shortage and like you couldn't keep it full capacity for your own stuff. And you had to like tell people, be like, hey, like I can't take you because I don't have enough people to serve the whole hotel.
It's a good question. So one thing I will say is that it's important that you, again, for you guys starting out, there's going to be another pandemic, there's going to be a war, there's going to be another catastrophe, and you're going to be in the business when that happens. So the first and foremost, the best thing you can do is to take care of people before the crisis happens, because now everybody's saying, oh, we care about our employees, we want to do this, we want to do that, but they never cared beforehand, and now there's a labor shortage and people are seeing right through it. For us at our hotel, we actually have more employees today than we did before the pandemic, and our business is growing because of Follow Me and I'll Be Behind You, taking care of people, doing the right thing every day. It's very hard to do the right thing every single day, but it's also very difficult to not have any employees and to be losing money. So you just have to decide what's the difficulty that you want to grapple with. Do you want to grapple with the labor shortage, or do you want to grapple with spending an extra 20 minutes when you want to go home to sit down and talk with somebody and have a conversation about something that's important to your employees? So that's the first thing I'll say is you got to do it right the first time. So when you go into a hotel or a restaurant or catering or whatever, don't wait until the labor shortage comes before you start taking care of people. But the second thing is you can shrink the size of your operation without it having an impact on the only thing it would have an impact on is how much money you bring in that day for that day. So, for example, I worked at a hotel when we actually just shrunk the size of the hotel because we didn't have enough housekeeping staff to service the rooms. And it was a peak demand date. So with a group that was a recurring group, so somebody who thinks of the smartest person in the room is going to say, why would you do that? This is our chance to drive rate, to drive RevPAR, get occupancy, and you can't shrink the size of the hotel. You can't do it. But you can't afford not to do it because this group, you know they're coming back, and you know that you have only a limited number of staff. So what you could do is either burn your staff out even more, they could all walk out, quit. The group is going to have a negative experience, so you're going to end up giving money back. And then the group isn't going to come back next year, or when they do, they're going to pay less money, and you won't be able to get the same rate that you did if you didn't deliver the promises if you didn't deliver on the expectation that you set when you negotiated for that original rate to begin with. So, and your corporate office is not going to stand for that. They're going to say, we need more money this time, more rate, more. So you have to make the decision to what you're going to do. And the right decision in that case is to just shrink the size of your operation temporarily to accommodate and deliver on your promises, because it's only money for one day. Anybody can make money one time, but can you make money for the holding period of your hotel? Can you make money next year? Can you top what you did? So that's what you have to be thinking about, that situation. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What about you?
So like we talked about burden, I know that your family has a history with hospitality.
Mm-hmm.
Worked at United for 38 years. You're working 17 hours a day, 7 days a week. Do you think that the year to serve others requires that severe sacrifice of personal endeavors and such as school relationships and just kind of life?
Yeah, so you were saying, does working this business require that level of sacrifice? Is that what you're asking?
Even that interest to serve hospitality to guests, do you think it requires a severe sacrifice? You don't do that.
Wow, that's deep. Did everyone hear the question? So, how do I answer this? Because what I say is important to this. I would say that to serve guests always requires a sacrifice that you have to be willing to make. Like, for example, when I came here last night and I checked in, I walked into my room and Professor Leone was nice enough to have a card for me and an amenity in the room with food and beverage. Maybe for her, and maybe I'm right or wrong about this, but maybe yesterday she wanted to leave work at 5 o'clock, but then she remembered I was checking in, so she got a card, wrote it, collected the food and beverage, placed in the room, and now it was 5:40 and she was leaving. That would be a sacrifice that she did to make me feel great when I came in.
So Kyle, can I stop you?
Yeah.
Do you know those Twinkies in your guest room? From Chicago, Twinkies.
Oh,
I made.
You did? Oh, great. Awesome. Well, that's a sacrifice. That's a deep sacrifice.
Twinkies, I made them.
How deep is that? She made something and brought it in. So whether she stayed until 5:40 or not, it doesn't matter because she was at home doing something for me to feel genuine hospitality when I came in. So I don't think that there's a transaction that can be had that doesn't require a little bit of sacrifice. If you're checking somebody in at the front desk, you have to be willing to sacrifice your homeostasis of your mind to give them an elevated experience. You can't talk to somebody like they're stupid because you know your hotel and they don't, even though to you it's second nature. You have to sacrifice what you want to say in order for what you should say, what the right thing to say, what the right thing to say by that person is. So I do think that every situation requires a sacrifice. And then do I think, what was the second part of your question?
I mean, that kind of answered it, but over in general, do you think, since you dropped out of school at 19, do you think it kind of requires that sacrifice? Or do you think you can get by while juggling all those tasks?
You have to decide, again, based on the theme of today, of what kind of sacrifice you're willing to make for yourself and your life and what it's going to look like. So I think that I make a pretty substantial sacrifice in my life, but that doesn't mean that you won't be successful if you don't make that type of a sacrifice. There are people that I work with who are fantastic. They're great salespeople. They do a good job. They deal with the clients right. People who check people in really well or cook really great burgers. And they're successful in what they do, and they come in, they do it, they go home, they don't really go out of their way to do anything extra. And I still respect them. I think they're great and they're professionals. And they do make the sacrifices in the day, but is it this larger sacrifice? No. So it's not required. It's just a decision that people have to make of what's more important to you. And today, maybe my sacrifice is extremely is deeper today, but then maybe 2 weeks from now I fall in love with somebody and I want to spend more time with them, but then maybe I come back. It's just, you just have to decide. Don't take yourself too seriously, I guess. So yes, well, I guess she can go first. Yeah.
So with the hospitality industry being so short-staffed, how do you manage to keep your employees
fulfilled? I would say you have to give them meaningful work, and you have to attach meaning to the work. So like, again, maybe to somebody who's like, if you're on a line cooking and you get ticket after ticket of burger, chicken sandwich, fries, and you're in the mud and you're just, cooking, maybe it's not meaningful because you're so close to it. So as a leader, you have to remind people that when that burger goes out, it's going to somebody who is, maybe they're away from their family for the 7th night in a row. Maybe they're lonely. Maybe that person is going through something in their life. Or maybe they're just really hungry, and that's like going to be like the best thing that they've had. It's going to taste so good to them, even though it's just a burger. So you have to remind people like what you're doing and how meaningful it is to somebody else that's not in the mud of just ticket. And then invite them, like for that cook, like let's go and talk to even though it's not the executive chef, let's go and talk to the guests who are in the dining room right now and see what they think about your food. Get out of the mud and see what's going on with the people that you're serving. So you have to intentionally attach meaning to what they're doing. And you also have to expose them to it in a way that's just beyond the theory of what you're telling them. Like I can tell them the theory of that person's lonely or this and that. Okay, now I'm telling you this, but now let's go and actually see people, and you can hear it for yourself. And the guy's gonna say, I was so hungry, I didn't eat all day, and this is like the best thing I've ever had. And now it's not just me telling them, it's the guest telling them. So encouraging them to be at the point of impact and talk to the guests and all that is important. Does that help you? Okay. What about you?
When you grew up, did you think giving hospitality to others was to be a good job?
Did I think it would what?
Did you think, when you grew up, did you think giving hospitality to others was going to be a good job for you?
No. I didn't think it was going to be difficult. But I didn't really think anything, I guess. I didn't even know what was going to happen. But then I started getting into it. I was like, wow, this is so much fun. Again, back to the first part of the conversation, this is so much fun, and it makes the work, it doesn't even feel like work anymore. Greg and I were having dinner last night with somebody that we used to work. So Greg and I met at the first hotel that I worked at, and Professor Leone also worked there. We didn't meet there, but she worked there before, called Indian Lakes Resort, which you guys might know in Bloomingdale. At the time, it was a Hilton product. And we had dinner with somebody that we met working there who was a front desk agent, and we were catching up with her, 7 or 8 years after the fact. Here we are catching up. And we were just talking about how much fun it was. And that hotel, by the way, was deteriorating. It was losing money. I was 17 years old, and we were sitting there in a meeting. I wasn't even supposed to be in that meeting, by the way, because it was supposed to be for executive committee and department heads and stuff, but I was just, because Greg was like, come on, let's go, because he didn't care. But we go to this meeting, and it's the owners and the management company. This is the president of the management company and the owner of the real estate asset sitting there basically telling everybody that we're shutting down all the catering space, we're closing the golf course, we're shutting everything down, and we're turning into like a select service motel basically. And by the way, the brand isn't going to renew our franchise, so we're turning into an independent hotel. And basically ruining everybody's life. And I didn't even know what was going on. Just sitting there like, because I'm 17, I'm like, I don't need this job. I'm just here. I'm not even supposed to be in this meeting. But going through that and stuff and thinking about it after the fact, it's like, wow, that's really difficult for people because you have somebody who's been working for 30 years and you now tell them that we're taking your dignity away and we're firing you in front of your peers, in front of everybody. So did I think it was going to be difficult? No. But will it inevitably be difficult for everybody? Yes. But that goes for everything that you do in life. And there's something valiant about doing difficult things and about being a part of it. And once you experience like the burden of the difficulty and then bounce back to the success of like the fruits of your labor, I guess, you'll understand. Just like with this, like when you graduate from here and you cried a few times along the way and other things were stressing you out, you'll be like, wow, I did that and it was great. So the same thing in hospitality. Yes.
Hi, Gary Anderson. On your YouTube channel, HospitalityMD, and even today, you stated that you have to have a good heart in hospitality. How has that helped you kind of navigate the global pandemic where we've seen 1.8 million people lose their jobs just in 2020 alone?
It's a great question. Having a good heart is like what Professor Leone did of making Twinkies at home and bringing them in. Like that's a good heart. Having a good heart is, again, spending that extra 20 minutes when you wanted to go home because somebody comes up to you and says, hey, can I talk to you about something? And you literally like have your bag and you're like walking out the door and you're like, yeah, of course you can. Instead of saying, no, I gotta go. Because when you're a leader, like people look at you as like, when they look at you, what they should see and what you want them to see is competency, calm, reassuring, nurturing, all these positive things you want them to see. So when you walk by and somebody's looking at you and they see competency, calm, nurturing, all these things, they want to talk to you. They're gravitated toward you. And having a good heart is understanding that that's the responsibility that you have when people look at you in that light, is to embrace that and give them the time of day and don't shut them down. Because how many other times has somebody shut them down during their life? So why should you be another person to do that when you're put in a position to not do that? So having a good heart is just being aware to your responsibility as a leader, and your actions should reflect your awareness of that responsibility and your willingness to accept that responsibility. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yes.
I love how philosophical you are. Like,
Oh, thanks.
I feel like so much of your success is that you seem like you're very just, you look at things from almost like a Buddhist type of nature where it's just giving back to humanity. So
I've never read anything Buddhist before, but maybe I should.
I just need to see like you're very like about awareness of other people, and that's kind of what the who's been making you so successful. But I had a question about housekeeping. We talked about on our hot topic last week that Professor Leone shared with us. There was an article from May of this past year that talked about how many housekeepers are being laid off because of hotels and housekeeping. I'm just curious of your own thoughts on retaining daily housekeeping for guests or staying multiple nights
Yeah. So here's what we did at my hotel. We said, nobody else is doing daily housekeeping service. No, we're going to go back and we're going to re-implement it because the brand tells you don't have to do it. But that doesn't mean that you don't do it. You can make whatever decision you want to make. That's just the minimum basic standard that the brand is telling you don't have to do it. Okay, but we want to do it, so we're going to do it. So we re-implemented it, and what we discovered was that people didn't want it anymore. We would find that they would be declining service. It would be DNDs on the door. So, yeah, it was an interesting discovery because here we were, we thought we were the heroes, which is another lesson, by the way, is what you think people want doesn't matter until you hear what the guests want. So even that comes to like, and I'm just going to use you as an example because you're in baking and pastry. Maybe you really like cheesecake and you love it and you love to make it, but the guests don't want to eat it. And now it's your ego because it's my cheesecake and why does nobody like cheesecake? Or it's my ego because why don't they want housekeeping? Look at what we did. I'm the boss and I just made this decision and now why don't I get to feel successful because it failed, if you want to take it as a failure. So cheesecake with housekeeping, the guests will speak, the guests will react, and that's what we have to do to be successful. So it was to my surprise and to everybody else's surprise that the guests really didn't want it the way that they do, but we still offer it to them because there's still people who it's meaningful to, but it's not the overwhelming majority. So what we learned is that people's expectations have changed, people's desires have changed, what people are willing to, I guess, not just accept or tolerate, but what their preferences are have changed. But I'm a proponent of offering daily housekeeping service because if most people are declining it anyway and you know that, then you shouldn't be afraid to re-implement it. So if you're an owner and you're going to say, it's too much money, we can't re-implement daily housekeeping service, but you don't even know what that impact is going to be because you haven't talked to the guests, you haven't tried it, you didn't do anything. So again, the guests will speak. I feel strongly about it being re-implemented for everybody. And I also feel like if we're talking about housekeeping and their employees and everything and retaining them and they're getting laid off, look at your scores for the guest scores of the cleanliness of your room and actually walk the rooms and see, are they clean, are they not clean? If they're dirty, you should give them less rooms and keep them on instead of laying them off. So if their typical assignment is 18 rooms, maybe you should, but now you have not enough rooms and you have to lay people off, give them 12 rooms and keep the housekeepers on and distribute that workload. But insist that the rooms get clean and keep people working and insist that they get clean. So it doesn't always have to be just keep them on or lay them off or there's daily housekeeping service or there's no daily housekeeping service. You can just, again, decide, just make a decision as to what's best for your business. Like that's my biggest message to everybody today is so many people are going to tell you that it has to be this or it has to be that, or you can only operate this way, or that it's not going to work, or that it's not going to be successful. Or in your case, again, somebody might tell you, the owner of a company or the GM of the hotel is going to say, well, the guests have always liked the cheesecake that we did here. So even though you're a new pastry chef, we want you to make the cheesecake like they did before because that's what the guests want and they always like it. Okay, when was the last time you actually talked to a guest? For a lot of these people, it's a long time ago, maybe a decade ago. You don't even know what they want. So, and that's the people you're going to be dealing with as you come up through the industry. And you should know that because as a young person, you're going to be easily influenced by somebody with experience and success, and you're going to think that it's right, even though it's wrong. So just because somebody is the GM or they're the president or the vice president or whatever, that doesn't make them right, or it doesn't make them smarter. So if the owner says we can't afford to do daily housekeeping service, as a housekeeping director or whatever you are in your life at that time, you might think, well, he's the owner, he's got to know more than me about this. We can't afford it. But if you know, based on this story that I'm telling you, that wait a second, how does he know that he can't afford it? Does he know what the impact is going to be? Has he tried it? Has he figured it out? Now you know that, okay, I'm taking him down a notch because he's not this all-knowing, omniscient owner, or the GM isn't this perfect person. It's just people making decisions, and those decisions can be wrong. They're allowed to be wrong, but you're allowed to challenge it too. Does that make sense?
It does, but because you guys changed management to where you're currently like owning it, was that one of the reasons that you could follow that, or had, if I'm understanding that correctly, this is for the Reddit hotel,
Yeah.
you're saying that, would, if you didn't own it, or would you guys have had to follow whatever the brand ruling was?
Great question, and I think this great question, right? I think this might be, so you're saying this is what, would you have to follow what the brand said? So the brand spoke already, and they said that daily housekeeping service is not required, meaning that they set the minimum basic standard as Hilton for DoubleTree hotels, saying that you do not have to offer it, meaning that anybody could. However, this is why when I stated, if you guys remember, the less interest involved, the better your life will be, and it's important to ask about it. So because we own and operate it, we're the judge, the jury, the executioner. Do we want to do it? Okay, we'll do it. If you have a corporate office from the management company, so we own and operate, and we have the brand. So the brand told us this is your minimum basic standard, we decide, own, operate. In another life, you'll have the brand telling you this is what we do, and then the owner saying, I want to do this or I don't want to do it, and the management company saying, the third party manager is saying, no, this is what I think is best, or this is what we want to do, because what about our incentive fee? What about our money? And the owner is going to say, well, what about this? And the brand is going to say, what about the guest? So in our case, we own and operate, make whatever decision we want to make. It's less complicated because there's not so many people who think they're smarter than everybody else arguing over something as simple as daily housekeeping when they haven't even thought about the impact of it. Nobody wants it anymore. So it's not going to cost you any more money. But will it give you a higher rate? Will it increase your reputation? Will it make somebody happy, the one person who does want it? Absolutely. And it's not going to cost you any more money. Does that help you all? Okay, great. Who else? Anybody? Yes.
So we also from a young age, you've had history, hospitality for family members, right? Does your career, you can never change? Because I've had history with my family in corporate America. I've changed my career path 3 times already. So did you ever think of something else, going to something else in hospitality?
Yeah, so just so you know, my dad, he's in corporate America. So my dad is a vice president of finance for a company. So he doesn't really get hospitality, but he supports hospitality. My mom was a flight attendant. She was the same role for 38, 39, 40 years. So I'm really the first one in my family who's actually, and she was the one who, union flight attendant, showed up. They told me I need to be here now. I do the flight, I come back from the flight, and you leave. Which, again, that's the extent of what you can do if you're in that role. I'm the first one in my family who decided that I'm going to really do this and be extracurricular. In my free time, I'm speaking to college students about hospitality. So my family didn't really have any influence on it except for the fact that I was exposed to the business because I was able to fly with my mom sometimes. I, got to do that with her. And she actually applied for my first hotel job for me, as a matter of fact. And then I got a call saying, hey, we got your application. And I was like, okay, great, I'll come in. And I was like, what? And she was like, oh yeah, I put in an application for you. But it wasn't like my family, there was a pressure about it or I had to change anything. From the moment I stepped foot into my first hotel job, I knew that I was going to do that. And I never changed it. But that doesn't mean that you can't. You can do whatever you want. You can change it. You don't have to have it all figured out. You should just do what you want, what makes you happy. You can change your mind as many times as you want, taste as many things as your palate can handle, and then eventually you'll probably settle on something that you like. But I will say this, within hospitality, there's a world of options because, again, you can be in a corporate office, corporate America, because hotel, it's a corporate, it's a business at the end of the day. So you could be in corporate America, being in the hotel industry, You can also be, you know, a banquet sous chef and, you know, leading the plate up for a 900-person banquet if you want. That's more fun to you. Or you could be in IT or security or finance, whatever you want to do. So does that help you? Cool. Yes.
When taking over a new hotel, how do you assess a person's performance for every week? How do you assess a person's performance, and what methods are you used to do it?
Like, how do you assess the performance of the team or of the hotel itself?
Of the workers.
Yeah, I don't have any like formal process for doing it. I just, is this person happy? Does this person have hope? Like, cause I actually, I spent some time at the worst rated Embassy Suites by Hilton hotel in the world, actually, which is located in North Carolina. And when you're around, if you're in an environment where you're failing every day, your mood is going to be lessened. So when I go in, I'm like, I know that you've been living as failure every single day, not because you're a failure, but because your environment is a failure. Nobody's ever happy. It's never good enough. The product's deteriorating. So I keep that in mind depending on where you are. So, but if you see like that somebody cares enough to, when they unload or when they break down the Cisco order and they put it in the fridge, do they do it right in a way that's organized, or do they just keep it on a cart, push it into the walk-in, and just say, I'm done with this? Those are the little things that you look for. Is there hope for somebody? Is there potential within somebody? And you have to talk to them to get to know them. You have to see them in action to get to know them. And again, are they in the right position in the hotel too? So maybe somebody they have like a RBF, you know, but they're at the front desk. And when you talk to them, they have a really good administrative mind and they're really organized, but they just don't look friendly and happy. So maybe they were doing great with the administrative work at the front desk, but they don't look happy, so let's put them in HR. And they can do that. Because they still have value, they're just not in the right place. So instead of firing them, let's put them in HR. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Have you noticed a major change in hotel staff service towards the guests, or has it just become about providing more commodities to the guests?
So people, owners, they're going to want to get away with as lean of a machine as they can possibly get away with, probably now more than ever. Even if they're making money, they're still going to want lean because you've already been doing it. Why can't you do it now? You've been, not by your own choice because we couldn't hire people or because there was no revenue. You were operating the hotel at this level with no staff. Now that we're coming back, they're going to expect the same. So do I expect changes? Changes to before the pandemic, yeah, I do. It's already changed and it will continue to change. Changes from now, yes, because I think if you're in a select service hotel, you're going to be without staff for the most part. And that's going to be on a smaller level. Like maybe on a Sunday morning you had 2 breakfast attendants in 2019, but now you only have 1. Or maybe you were on a Friday night, you had the 1 person at the front desk at the select service hotel, and you had 1 person in housekeeping to do running for people's stuff. And now you don't have that person, so everyone has to come down to the front desk to get whatever they want. So I expect that in bigger markets, in union environments, and other places where like meeting and convention hotels and other stuff, I think that there's going to be a point where they're left with no choice but to bring the staff back. Because it just requires more people to run that type of a hotel. And when the workers' comp starts to come in, the lawsuits start coming in, when all those issues bubble up the owners are gonna be like, okay, well, I guess we need more people so people aren't chopping their fingers off in the kitchen and getting workers' comp and, you know, that sort of stuff. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit. I think, again, to summarize, there's the select service and the bigger box hotels. Select service will be without people forever, probably. And full service and meeting and convention hotels, they'll get people back eventually. It'll come back.
And then for those bigger box hotels, do you think that the staff friendliness towards the customer has changed over the past, let's say, like 2 decades, or have they just wanted to implement more, you know, services for guests, like you know, like everyday breakfast or stuff like that?
I haven't been in the business for 2 decades. Maybe you can help. I don't know what it was like. I really don't. But what I can say in my observations is that, you know, luckily my mentor is 70-something years old, so Craig, so I can learn from him and see what life was like back then. And it used to be like where you had 1 employee per room in your hotel. Like if you had 200 rooms, you had 200 employees. Now you'll never see that. So I think there's a different level of service, but as we've also seen, so somebody might say, well, that's right, why aren't we doing that anymore? Why is it not 200 employees for a 200-room hotel? But what we know is that guests don't want housekeeping anymore. So do you need 200 employees anymore? You just have to find what's right for your guests, your market, and who's coming in. That's important too. You have to know your guests. So if your main guest is truck drivers and they just want to bring in their own beer in their own coolers, they want to do their own thing, they don't want you to talk to them. All you need to have is ashtrays and ice machines. That's all they want. They don't want housekeeping. But if your clientele is a bridezilla wedding every weekend, then you're going to have to do better than ashtrays and ice machines for that clientele.
And you know, I can kind of contribute a little bit to this conversation. I think that the labor, I think you're spot on with the labor, but I think the offerings of the hotels is changing because technology is changing and competition is increasing. So if we're offering Wi-Fi at select service hotels for free, and some of these big boxes that Kyle's talking about is still charging for Wi-Fi, the hotels are going to have to get creative in trying to figure out a way to not nickel and dime the guests as they did in some of these big boxes to stay competitive, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The Wi-Fi is actually a really good example because, like, I'm going to go to log in and they're like $7.99. You're going to be like, what the fuck? Like, why do I have to pay for this Wi-Fi? But then what somebody will tell you is, well, are you a Marriott Bonvoy member? Because if you are, you get free Wi-Fi here. You got to sign up and do all this stuff. So I don't necessarily agree with it. If it's me, everyone gets free Wi-Fi. Like one thing that we do at my hotel, we're a DoubleTree, and we can charge for breakfast. That's what they say. You can charge for breakfast. We give breakfast away for free, and it's a really nice breakfast. Greg, can you attest to that?
Beautiful breakfast.
Yeah. So we have scallops, crab claws, omelet station, eggs Benedict station, all this stuff at this complimentary breakfast. So I remember when I first got to the hotel and I sat down and I asked Craig and I saw this breakfast, I was like, thinking I'm the smartest person in the room, like, what's your cost per occupied room on breakfast? And he was like, I don't know and I don't care because my rate is $45 higher than everybody else's. So it literally could cost me $25 per room, per occupied room, and it wouldn't matter. I'd still be winning and making money. So that's the thing that you got to think about is, so with the Wi-Fi, it's like the president of the company is going to say, we need to charge for Wi-Fi because we need this revenue. Okay, when nobody books or when the rate is low, then you can live in that world that you created. We're already paying for the Wi-Fi anyway, regardless if people use it or not. So let's just account for that expense and put the rate where it needs to be and get the occupancy. I think we probably agree with that same page. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes.
So when you mentioned that you had like a podcast,
Yeah.
even I looked at this like website called like LinkedIn that mentioned that you had a podcast that
Yeah.
you could speak with other people about hospitality.
Yeah.
What was it like to like speak with people that have a passion for hospitality?
Oh, it's great. It's like you get into the room with somebody who's a like-minded person and you can just talk and talk and talk and talk. Like before class started, Professor Leone, Greg, and I were just talking because we're all cut from the same cloth of people in hospitality who care about it, who want to see it do well, who, have opinions on things that we know about. We keep up with current events and we want to talk about it. We care about you guys. We talked about you when we were coming in because what do you care about now? What does the 2022 College of Dupage Hospitality 101 student want to know about? And she keeps track of that because it's important to her. So when we're talking, it's like, okay, let's have that conversation. And we're, again, all in the same mindset of hospitality. So it's great. And I will say this, that if y'all don't have LinkedIn, you should get a LinkedIn account because it's a really powerful platform for people to connect and to be involved. I actually met Craig Poole on LinkedIn, which allowed me to make an award-winning film, which allowed me to have a job, allowed me to have a mentor in him, all just from being on LinkedIn. So it's pretty powerful stuff, among other things. Professor Leone invited me to be here on LinkedIn. So get one, it's great. Yes?
So, taking this a totally different avenue here, we have the HospitalityMD, but I also saw that you have a thing for screens.
Oh yeah, I do actually. Yeah, thank you for asking me that question. Yeah, my two loves in life are music and hospitality. So I like to play the guitar, I like to play the ukulele, I like to play the bass. So that's my therapy time.
Do you do any of that in your hotel?
Sometimes I serenade employees. Like one time I brought my ukulele to the laundry room and we were just jamming out downstairs, or you bring it into the kitchen and play for the cooks and everything, or you just incorporate it sometimes. Or I played my guitar for the restaurant during the pre-shift just to get them in a good mood before we started the day. So yeah, I like to incorporate it if I can. It's not every day, but there's occasions when I bring it out and play for people. Thanks for asking about that. Yes?
So going back to your show, in an interview about a year ago with True Hotel Leaders, you sort of mentioned that the cinematography was because of the MD crew, Greg and Tom. And so I kind of want to know, if it weren't for them, would you have thought of the show yourself, or do you think the show would exist?
No, I didn't think of the show idea. Greg actually thought of the idea. Greg is really good. Yeah, thanks for asking that question. Greg and Tom deserve a lot of recognition. I'm just the person who, I guess doesn't have anxiety about public speaking, so I do it. But Greg actually approached me when we were working at a hotel, and he said, "Hey, we should start a podcast. Do you want to be a part of it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to be a part of it." So then we started doing it. We made the decision to do it, and we did it. But yeah, so he came up with the idea. I came up with the name, which I like the name HospitalityMD. It's to me. But again, maybe you don't like it. Maybe it's the same thing as the cheesecake. Maybe I like the name HospitalityMD, but y'all hate it. But it's my ego now, just like it is with the cheesecake or with the housekeeping. Keep that in mind. That's human nature, guys. That's literally your entire life will be that as you come up in the business or wherever you go. So just keep that in mind.
So what does that MD stand for?
Like a doctor, like Hospitality MD, medical doctor. So it's kind of like, what can we diagnose as the problem and prescribe the solution? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, appreciate it. Anybody else? Yes.
When you first started the podcast, it said just to do what you said. So I've had the privilege of learning and building relationships with some of the foremost hospitality voices, and like, so I'm gonna ask like, what piece of knowledge, like, cause like, they're from one of like the biggest names in the hospitality industry, like, giving you that still like sticks with you to this day.
It's a great question. I hear from so many people. Greg, I encourage you to jump in and do this. I'm gonna just go, because I literally thinking through all my mind right now is going, okay, who have we interviewed? What have we talked about? What did they say? What did I take away? I can't think that fast. So what I will say for the sake of answering your question is, Craig Poole, I interviewed him on the podcast. That was our first conversation we had, which is I saw him on LinkedIn. I invited him to be a guest on the podcast, and I interviewed with him. And the biggest lesson I took away from him is a lesson that I shared with you today, which is just because somebody is the president or the vice president doesn't mean they're smarter than you. Doesn't mean they're smarter than you. I'm actually understanding, talking to you today is helping me understand that deeper, because I'm thinking about that sentiment from the minds of a person who's just new entering the industry. You are going to look at these people as you come up like they can do no wrong, they know everything, that they're right, that you have to listen to them, like if they have an opinion that you should change your opinion to be that. You will do that. You will do it. But qualify everything that people say. Think critically about it. There's no entitlement to being smarter than you just because they have a title or they've been doing it for so long. People can still be wrong. So that's my biggest lesson. That's my biggest thing that I'll share with you guys about that. So, yes.
You've been talking about a little bit today on your journey on making the documentary.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, going from that hotel, which obviously in Chicago had to shut down, to then making that documentary, how has that changed your perspective on the industry as a whole?
It changed my perspective on the industry in the sense that like nobody said that I couldn't do that. But I was still in the industry doing it. You can, like, who was it? That you, right, Nate? You want to do education for people, culinary education for people. Just because there's no class here that talks about how to do an education for culinary, maybe there is, I don't know, I don't think there is. You learn how to do the culinary here, and you have to go out on your own and learn how to educate people and learn how to put the infrastructure in place, do it online. What are you going to do? How is it going to work? That's the same thing. Like, would anybody say that if Nate does that, he's not in the industry anymore? No, I don't think so. Everyone would say he's still just as much in the industry teaching people on his YouTube channel about culinary as he is working as a cook at a restaurant. So I say the same thing about the documentary. If I'm spending my day interviewing people in hospitality, putting the dots together, connecting it, building this thing, that's all about hospitality, which requires a deep comprehension of it to be able to put something together like that. Am I still doing it? Yeah, I'm still doing it. So that's what I learned, is like, it doesn't have to be what you think it is or what people tell you it has to be. It can be whatever you decide it's going to be for you. So.
I'm sorry, Barry, forgive me for interrupting. Can they watch this documentary?
Yeah,
Maybe
they
not
can.
right now, but is there an avenue for them to see it?
Yeah, they can. I will send you a link, and then maybe you could just like blast it out to everybody.
Sure.
Is that
okay with you?
Yeah, it's definitely okay with me.
Yeah.
I think people would learn from it, because it goes into basically the premise of it is this. Reading, Pennsylvania in 2011 was actually the poorest city in the country, with one of the highest crime rates in the country. So a retail mogul named Albert Boskov met Craig Poole, and they decided to build this $70 million hotel right in the middle of this city where nothing had been built for decades. It was deteriorating. As a catalyst to revitalize the community, and they said things like, we're going to have our employees be in a walk to work radius, so we're going to give meaningful employment to people in the area, which inevitably means that you're going to have people who've been incarcerated, people with addiction issues, people with broken homes, people with bad families. And this story basically chronicles how to have a successful hotel and do the right thing for people. Because, and I know this because I was there with hotel companies that you would get fired at the first thing that you did wrong, or, you know, I worked in a hotel that's by McCormick Place Convention Center, which is further south in Chicago. It's not like the south side of Chicago, but it's still, you know, so what you would get would be employees who were coming in from the south side of Chicago and working, and they didn't get it. I remember, you know, we had some employees who would come in and they'd be, you know, super hungover or drunk, and then they would get written up, and then they got fired, and then be like, "What happened?" "Oh, my brother just got shot." But they didn't get it. No, can you come into work drunk? No, you can't. There's reality of limitations that people can do. But if your brother gets shot, you don't deserve to get fired. You don't deserve to get fired. So I saw people who didn't get it. Craig gets it, so I go there to find somebody who gets it and be with them. But I'll send the documentary to the professor, and she'll share it with y'all so you can see it.
Does the opinion of your employee and I mean like everybody around doesn't matter, or it's only like the opinion of the customer you're gonna have in the hotel?
That's a great question. The opinions of the employees do matter because they're going to know what's happening. So again, we'll just use the housekeeping as an example. If I'm the owner and I say, I want housekeeping back in the hotel for people, but I never talk to the housekeepers, I never talk to the leadership in the housekeeping department, and I just say my opinion is the only one that matters as the owner, we're not going to be successful. So you have to go to the people who are closest to what's happening. So in that case, it's the housekeepers, it's the housekeeping leadership. Their opinion matters. If it's the cheesecake, for example, yes, the pastry chef, her opinion matters about what she wants to make. But I will say, if the guests aren't going to eat it, then we have to take that opinion and qualify that opinion and just say, okay, well, data tells us that nobody's buying the cheesecake, and the dishwashers who are at the point of impact are seeing that every cheesecake that comes back is full. There's still cheesecake on the plate. So if they know that people don't like it when they do buy it, it's all coming back to the dish pit. Or they just don't buy it and it's not selling. So then we have to say, okay, well, pastry chef, you're gonna have to come up with something new that people are gonna buy and that people are gonna like. So you have to balance that, because people will, you know, say, oh, you know, your employees' opinion really matters. It really matters. You should always listen to your employees. You should. But you should also listen to your guests and do what's successful so you don't go out of business and you have people to employ. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. How about one more question? Okay, one more question, and then if it's okay with both Kyle and Greg, we as a tradition, what we try to do in this class, and these guys don't know this yet because you're our first in this guest lecture series, but what we like to do is we like to have everybody come down and take a picture with you both, if that's okay. Shake your hands, say hello, thank you for this. So how about one more question? Let's make it a good one. Oh, is that is that too much pressure? You go ahead and choose.
No, but I want you to choose the last one.
Oh gosh.
Because I can't do it. I'm going to break something.
Oh no. Okay, how about you?
So, when I was looking at your LinkedIn, I saw that like you're working as director of front office and a front office manager.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of like, obviously a bunch of different positions. Is there like any sort of like differences between those two?
Yeah, so there's it depends on the hotel that you work at. It also depends on, because different places have different things, but in the environment that I was working in as a front office manager, I was a manager reporting to a director of front office. meaning that I was managing the daily operations exclusively. Whereas in a director role, you're managing the short, medium, and long-term priorities of the department and your department head role. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
But you're gonna go, unless you go downtown or you go to San Francisco or you go somewhere else, you're not gonna see these director roles. Like, if you go to the Country Inn and Suites down the road and say, hey, I want to be a director of front office here, they're probably not even gonna know what that is. But if you go to an 800-room hotel in downtown Chicago and you say, I want to be the director of front office, they're gonna know what that is and they're gonna be able to help you get there. So,
That was
I
an
guess,
excellent question. Nicely done, you guys. Of all of you, right? Nicely done, nice questions.
yeah, I think so too. Great job, guys.